felt like your life was completely out of control and you were just heading down the wrong path? Well, today's guest is going to show us how to take back the wheel and drive yourself successful. Welcome to Havilah and Friends. I'm your host, Havilah Malone, and every week I bring you inside my amazing world of mindfulness teachers, inspirational speakers, business experts, celebrities, and so much more to have the conversations that matter to you. And today we're talking to a practitioner of the law of attraction. He's also a licensed professional counselor, and this beautiful soul is the former director of the Napoleon Hill Scholars Program at the University of Virginia at Wise. Please help me welcome my good friend, who's also a professional speaker and author of Drive Yourself Successful, 11 Interstates to Personal Empowerment, Rachel Lynn. Hey!
Hey, Havilah! Thank you for having me as a guest.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be able to have you on. And you have, what you have created in this book, Drive Yourself Successful, is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant, because I think a lot of times we do face challenges in our lives. We feel like we are off of our path, or we're not heading in the direction that we want to go. And I love that people always say, well, let Jesus take the wheel. And yes, but there's also things that we need to do for ourselves and our own development to take control of that wheel. And you break it down with these car analogies. I mean, something that is so, familiar with so many people. And I mean, you break this down to the minute level of all of the pieces and components of driving in the car, in the process of maintenance, and relate it to life. And I want to know, how was that inspired, and who was this really to be able to help?
Gotcha. Well, actually, growing up as a child, my grandfather and my uncle used to always work on kind of like old cars. And so I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, and I would just kind of hang around them, watching them work on the cars and learning about the parts. And I don't know why I was fascinated with that, but I was. And, as I grew up, I was the teenager who could identify a car by the headlights or the taillights and things like that. So I just kind of really took a liking to vehicles and how they operated and what made them successful, I guess, so to say. And in my work as a counselor, I began to realize the positive effect of analogies in session. So we would compare a lot of things that people were going through to different types of other things in life. And one of those that became prominent for me was an automobile and a car. And we would use that in session. And it's test driven with all of the clients that I've worked with and the students at the university where I worked. And it just kind of came about that way. And basically my years, 11 and a half years I spent at the university, and a lot of that time was spent kind of developing what needed to go into this book and working with my students and seeing what worked. And my goal with this was to put this into a book that I could share with the world, because I saw how successful it was in session with the students that I worked with.
Oh my goodness, that is so amazing. And I love that you said that, hey, I had this experience, with cars, and I was able to because there is power in storytelling. There is such power when we connect, because we're able to create these mental pictures in our minds. And it's like, oh, okay, that relates to that. And you were able to do that, with a lot of the analogies that are in the book. And it reminded me of Henry Ford. When Henry Ford, before, for those of you who drive Fords or familiar with Fords, this is the gentleman we're talking about. And before he became the Henry Ford that he actually took all of his life savings, went and purchased a vehicle to bring that vehicle home into the garage and take it apart. Like part by part, took it apart. It was all in pieces all over the garage. And he would spend his time rebuilding it, then taking it apart, rebuilding it and taking it apart. And of course, everybody around him thought he was absolutely insane. But it's that process of building, like if we relate that to life, building ourselves, that we have to take apart and understand how we work from the inside. And you literally created these 11 interstates, these inner states
Right.
for personal empowerment. So I just wanted to share just a little bit about kind of like that process of, what is it that we need to be looking at within ourselves to help with our growth process.
Gotcha. Well, basically, the first interstate or chapter, so to call it, whichever one we'll call it an interstate, is basically learning how to clean out your trunk. And that's, I thought, was a great way to start the book, because I think so many people have things stored that inhibit their performance, that hold them back, that weigh them down. And I think it's important that you find what those things are and be able to kind of take that shovel them out, but also identify things that should be stored in your trunk in times that you feel like you're about to break down or maybe need a boost. And some of those things that I have found through my work as a licensed professional counselor that people have stored in their trunk is words. And it's unbelievable how the words that people say to you stay with you throughout your life, especially if they come from people that you love, or in relationships that you value. Things can be really hurtful and damaging to our self-esteem. So a lot of people hang on to these words and they keep them stored in their trunk, which keeps them from living life to their full potential. So it's about learning what are the things that you hold on to that people have said, and how do you replace that with something more positive. Past failures is another thing that's stored in people's trunks that keeps them from moving forward. And I think as I've grown older and the more I've researched and read and lived, failure is a part of success. And, I was listening to a motivational video this morning, and they say you fail your way over and over to success. And I do believe that's a big piece that people miss, is that those past failures sometimes get stored and the people don't move on. But one of the really cool things that I suggest people store in their trunks is jumper cables. And I'd say most people probably have a set of those in their cars. But I speak from the perspective of, it can happen when you least expect it. You get in your car, you turn the key, and nothing happens. Distress has set in. You've got a drained battery. And what do you do to boost that? And trying to figure out what are the things that are draining your battery. And if that's other people, if it's a job, if it's relationships, whatever that may be in your life that's draining your battery and keeping you from accelerating to your optimal potential, then I think you need to look at maybe removing those things from your life and connecting with positive batteries, positive energy people that uplift you and encourage you to continue to move forward. So just a little bit of examples of the clean out your trunk chapter, because I felt like that was a good solid way to start before you could move on to the next.
And you're right, you have to do the self-work. Like you have to, let go of the things that don't serve you anymore. And there's actually something you quoted, I'm going to quote from the book, and this was so powerful. And even when I read it, I was just like, oh, okay, yes. He said, never stop growing and stretching yourself. Don't be afraid of outgrowing those close to you. Refuse to let anyone hold you back. You can't neglect your own car because the one next to you is about to break down. I was like, wait.
That kind of sticks with you, right? In my area, there is this common phrase, and I remember it growing up, and they called it getting above your raisins. And I think I mentioned it in there in the book as well. And that's a lot of times, even with students that I've worked with in a counseling capacity, is when they start to grow or have big goals for their life that other people in their families haven't done, other people start to get uncomfortable and try to discourage and not want them to kind of go further. And the common phrase in my area was, well, you're getting above your raisins. And what I want to say is get above your raisins. It's okay to step out into the fullness and the capacity that you are capable of, even if that makes other people uncomfortable. Because in the end, you have to do what is best to you. And I think you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to the world to be your best self and get yourself out there and make the difference that only you can.
Mm-hmm. You said, let adversity fuel you, not fool you. Mm-hmm. So really being able to get out of your own way and not allowing other people to drag you down or stop you from pursuing the things that you really want in life. And so I think it was a great kind of start in the book when you talk about, hey, you got to clean out the trunk first. First, we got to get some awareness of what's going on. You got to take the stuff out of the trunk that doesn't need to be there anymore. Put the stuff in the trunk that needs to be in there. But you also talk about this process of maintenance and these things that really have to happen. And just like you would, do maintenance on your car, you got to do oil changes, you got to keep the car clean, and so kind of show how that relates to us in our lives. Like, what are some things that we need to do?
Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you've got a Tesla sitting in your driveway. If it's not properly maintained, it's going to halt at some point, and it's just going to sit there. And I think that is true for all of us. And I am such a big advocate of self-care, especially being in a healthcare profession. I mean, that's our ethical obligation, is to take care of ourselves. But I have, teaching the Napoleon Hill and learning about those principles of maintenance of sound health, I think that is such a crucial factor for all of us. And that's something that we should continue to look at each day and continue to see how we can improve ourselves, because the better we are, the better we can help other people. And I believe in, not just practicing what you preach, but preach what you practice, so to say. And I am, I try to live those principles so that I can model that for other people. But for me, some of the maintenance is, meditation. That has become a regular part of my life, and just learning to be still and focused. And I have found that that's where some of my biggest creative ideas come from. And that sense of peace and calmness, that's really been beneficial in my life, and just finding direction with that sense of stillness and mindfulness, those types of things. But exercise, probably admit that, I could do better, and I think we all could, but that's really a priority, is some type of exercise, getting your heart pumping, staying healthy, drinking water, getting enough sleep. I mean, all the things that you hear about, but we really don't realize how important they really are in making us feel the best that we could feel. I love listening. Yeah. I love motivational videos, audios, anything that inspires me. And, what was it that Zig Ziglar said? Some people think motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why, you should do it daily. We have to do this daily, and every day make yourself a priority and engage in that maintenance, because if you let yourself go and you let it go and you let it go, there's no way you can live your optimal potential.
Certainly. And speaking of, you said you want to practice what you preach and preach what you practice. And I love that, because being that living example of the things that you're sharing with other people. And I'm really interested too in this journey, because I know that this is your very first book. Mm-hmm. And to step into that new place, because you talk about in the book about igniting that spark and really going after the things that you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. And so you spent 11 years as a licensed counselor, in the education field. You help people with this law of attraction piece, but moving into a space of being an author is a new space. It's a new territory. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't pursue their passion or do the things that they feel called to, because it's outside of their comfort zone. So I want you to share a little bit about how did you kind of take that step? What sparked the creation of the book?
Okay. Well, when I was about 12 years old, my mother took me to a women's conference. And I was fascinated, and I still remember what the lady looked like that was speaking, and how I felt. And I said, that's what I want to do. That's how I want to be when I grow up. And from that point on, when I loved writing inspirational speeches, and I wanted to get into presentations and talks and things like that, and do some motivational speaking. Well, when I was hired at the University of Virginia's College at Wise, one of the components of my job was to be able to do presentations and things for our campus community. So I started out writing what I thought was going to be an inspirational speech. But the more I got into it, the more I realized this needs to become a book. And that was how Drive Yourself Successful actually started. So I didn't work on it continuously over that time. I wrote an intro. I had a different title at the time, and then I wrote the title of each chapter, and then would add things periodically throughout the time there based on the experiences of the people that I was working with, so that I could apply that to the larger population. So it took a lot of time to put the information into the book, but that was the inspiration to kind of start there. And like I said, it started out as an inspirational speech and turned into a book. And I knew there's something that I've grown to trust, and that's your gut. Like, I knew there was an inner knowing that I can do this, that I can do the motivational speaking, and that I can become a published author. And so I think when you think about programming your subconscious mind and positive affirmations, that's what I told myself for years. And as it got closer to the time that I finished the book, I literally had no idea how I was going to make this happen. I remember spending nights in front of my computer. How do I do this? Do I get an agent? How do I get this out there? I'm just a girl from Wise County, Virginia, right? So, how do I get this out there and make this happen? And I had no clue. But the thing was, I knew in my gut it was going to happen. So I think it's about applied faith, trusting the process, and taking the steps without trying to force or rush, but just knowing the end outcome is a definite. You just don't know how it comes about. And that's part of the beauty of life, is trusting that process and letting it go with the flow.
Yes, that's like putting the destination into the GPS and then saying, you know what, hey, this is going to be a process. It's going to be a journey that we're going down. And sometimes you get detoured and you got to come back onto the road. But it's something that you mentioned in the book, and you said that if you accomplish one small thing today in relation to your goal, then today was a success. And it sounds like the process for you, hey, yes, it was over a extended period of time, but you had a clear vision on what it is that you wanted, and you started taking those successive steps to be able to make it happen. And you didn't know how,
right?
But you just took the very next step in the process. And that's all we can do, and just trusting the process and continuing to program ourselves with positive affirmations and positive people to be able to move forward in the direction that we want to. And I think that's kind of like taking the wheel of life. And I highly recommend, this is such a great book. Like it just really, it made me even stop and think about, how I think about certain things. And I'm like, wait, if I wouldn't, do this to my car, why would I do it to me? Like if I wouldn't, swerve my car off the road, why would I swerve or sabotage my own progress in life? So you really were able to take these, simple concepts and apply it to real life, scenarios and even problems to be solved. And so I'm really appreciative and grateful for that. As a matter of fact, there's one thing, there's a story that you shared in there, because a lot of times we can be on the climb and we can be doing the things that we want and striving for greatness, but there's people who may not want to see you at the top. And there's people who may be threatened by your success. And you talked about the 7th grader flutist who was trying to get to first chair. So you share a little bit about that.
Well, yes, I can share that because that's a very personal story to me. And I think it's a good evidence of what makes the difference if someone continues to persist despite that adversity, or someone that just kind of stops and don't live their full potential. But 7th grade, I was in the band, I played the flute, and I was very dedicated about practicing. I think I drove my parents and my grandparents crazy, playing the flute all the time. But basically, you could challenge for chairs. And what happened was, when I was in 7th grade, I challenged the seniors and sat first chair. And so obviously that did not go well, to have a 7th grader sitting first chair. But you know what? I knew, and I was picked on, and I had my part of my uniform stolen right before a major game, and just so that I would get in trouble and not, have everything together. But you know what? I felt like I owed it to myself to be true to who I was. And if that was my talent, then I needed to excel at that, even if it was tormentful at times to me. I knew that I had a talent to share with the world, and that I wasn't going to let people stop me despite how they behaved toward me. And I think that's a very valuable lesson on success, is while there are so many people that are in your corner and they back you up and they want to see you succeed, there probably are equally the amount that don't, because it makes other people uncomfortable for whatever reasons. And so I think it's being able to stand up to that and let it fuel you and not fool you into something different.
That resilient spirit is something that we can all benefit from, so that we can continue to overcome our adversities and really use that as the fuel for our success.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be like the final thing you would leave everyone with on really how to drive themselves successful? Because we do have the ability to do it. Like, what's that like, that thing?
I think that you just need to know that within you, you have all of the keys that you need. And it's not from an external source. It's not from other people. It comes from within you. So when you grip that steering wheel and you're in the driver's seat, you have total control over how you want your life to be created. And that gives you all the power in the world. There's your V8 engine right there. But recognizing the strength and inner resiliency, your operating abilities, powertrain potential, recognizing that for yourself drives you to success in all areas of life.
You heard it. So Rachel, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, because you want to get a copy of that book or get Rachel onto your events to be able to come and speak and encourage your audiences. She's definitely someone you want to reach out to. So how can people stay connected with you?
Yes, awesome. I'd love to connect with you guys. You can connect with me through my website at rachellynnspeaks.com. And if you're interested in bringing me on as a speaker or having me come do some workshops or events for you, you can complete the request form on my website, rachellynnspeaks.com. Email rachellynnspeaks@outlook.com. And on Instagram, rachellynn.1111. And Facebook, Rachel Lynn, as a public figure page. So I'd love to connect with you guys and share some inspiration and motivation with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. And we all know when we share our stories, we get to live, to learn, and love a little bit more. And I want you to be proof of what's possible. I'm Havilah Malone, and thanks so much for tuning in to Havilah and Friends. And I can't wait to see you next week.
Thank you.